Well, welcome back to the My First Rodeo podcast, the show that asks really interesting, famous, exciting people about the various firsts on their path to success. Today, I would say is a very special episode. It's not a funny episode, although he's a sweet, kind person. I wish you could see Mohamedou Ould Slahi. You can if you Google him, because he's got a great smile. But other than having a great smile and a kind heart, this is about a man who was tortured for over 14 years, mostly in Guantanamo Bay, but also in Jordan and in Mauritania, where he was kidnapped from his home because he was suspected potentially of having some involvement in terrorism, including September 11th, and ultimately he was exonerated from all that. But he was tortured in a brutal way, and he tells a wonderful story on this podcast and also in the movie The Mauritanian and in his book Guantanamo Diary about the best of America and the worst of America. And he still loves America and loves Americans, notwithstanding what happened to him. And I think there's a lot to learn from it. So I'm not going to do a lot of fanfare in the beginning, certainly not a lot of silliness. I think you'll learn a lot from this episode, and hopefully it'll inspire you to want to learn more about Mohamedou Ould Slahi. How are you doing? I know it's late there. You doing well?
Yeah, I'm doing well.
Very good.
A little bit, like work. I arrived yesterday from Norway, and like when I travel, I get very tired.
I bet.
Yes.
I bet. Well, we'll let you get to bed soon, but thanks for making time to talk to us. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, of course.
So
Thank
you're
you
back.
for having me.
Of course. You're back in the Netherlands now?
I'm back. I'm now in Amsterdam.
Okay. Oh, very good. How are you enjoying living there?
Very much so. I love it here. I love freedom.
Yeah.
And Dutch people are very easygoing and very uncomplicated. Everything is like normal. They have a saying, doe maar gewoon en je doet gek genoeg. Meaning, act normal, and that is crazy enough.
I like that. How does that compare with the culture you grew up in?
I mean, if you don't leave the cocoon of your family, you are safe because you're good, because your family accepts you for who you are. But if you leave that, small bubble, protective bubble of the family, people tend to be very judgmental and a lot of expectation on the individual. Like you have to fit into the whole, and perfectly, But also the simplicity is there. So that I recognize the simplicity. But the Dutch people are much more like, the country is much more developed. So
right.
You will not see like high rise like you see in New York, or very like, Golden Gate Bridge. I don't know what's called.
Yeah, in San Francisco.
Yes, in San Francisco. Or you won't see something like Frankfurt, Germany. But everything is working.
Mm-hmm.
And they have a saying, God created the universe and the Dutch created the Netherlands.
Mm.
Yeah, it's very
interesting. So you talk about leaving your cocoon, and obviously we're going to talk about your time after you were kidnapped and taken to Guantanamo Bay and other places. But before that, you had left the cocoon. You had gone overseas to go to engineering school and to work, right?
That is correct.
And so, I mean, is that a common experience? You grew up in Mauritania, and to leave that cocoon and to go overseas, to go to school and to work and to really get involved in the world at a young age.
Yeah, correct. So my dream was to be a camel herder, because I saw in my family the ideal person, even though I only saw him until I was 11 years of age, because he passed on. And but I never forget anything about him.
Who was he? Who was he?
My father.
Your father.
And everything I am, and everything I do, and everything that I learn, that is all extension of my father and his wishes for me, and I remember walking the camel with him, and I always ask him, why don't I ride the small camels, because you ride the big one? And he explained to me, no, you cannot ride a camel until it's broken. And then I asked him to break one of the small one. He said he cannot do that because he need to wait. Then I kept seeing the babies getting bigger and bigger. And then all of a sudden, really big. But I want the very small one, the small babies and then I don't know how or when, but one day I didn't know how to ride, and then the next day I know how to ride. I don't know how, because I don't know how the memories of people work, but my memory works like I remember moments and I don't remember what before or what came after that. But the successive, attacks of droughts in the 70s and the 80s decimated, this lifestyle, at least in my part of the country. The South and my mother decided single-handedly that we need to move to the city. And then I remember we were very poor. My father did not agree with my mother, but my father is very accommodating, and he never spoke in anger either to me or to my siblings or to my mother, and so we came we cannot go inside the city because we don't have houses, so we settled on the land of the city of Rosso, that is a major city at the border to Senegal. I was so poor, I couldn't afford to buy shoes, and I remember going to school without shoes. And I would run and, dash from one structure to the next, trees, anything just to cool down my small feet and go. I still feel the bite of the sand. And I remember this woman, our neighbor, they came from Nouakchott, but they stayed there because of vacation. And it's just like their vacation place is not really their main, because they're rich people. And she stopped me and she started interrogating me why I don't wear my non-existent shoes. And I was too ashamed to tell her that I didn't have shoes. My family was too poor. And I had to go back, just giving her the feeling that I really had shoes, and then I took another route.
Mm.
I did well in school. So I went to school by by accident because I was too small to walk. And my father, he he was like undecided whether I go to school or not, because he just want to teach me and send me to people to teach me the way we do in the Bedouin life, because they just teach you what you need. And there are no exams, there is no, there is no time limit. You can take all the time you want, and there is no number one, number two, number three, and there is no A, B, C, A plus, B plus, none of that. And looking back, I see it now as a very horrible exercise, what they do in schools, this French system, that they pit the kids against each other. And then in a class, you know exactly where you are. You are number 2 or you are number 7. You are a C student, you are an A student. It's just horrible, to do this to children. So my family never asked me about tests because they didn't know what tests are. But I just because I was so inspired by my father, I was always number 1. Whatever number 1 meant, really, because now I look back at it with a great deal of disgust. And I know this is still practiced, and I always wanted to know why they do this. And my thinking is that it came from the military regime. Like the pride of France is Napoleon Bonaparte. And Napoleon Bonaparte was a military general. He was not a person. He was not a philosopher. And so he's the one who was responsible for modern Europe, actually, modern France. He was the one who took down the Roman Empire, the Holy Roman Empire, and replaced it with militarism. And ironically, they made the revolution to get rid of the king, and he made himself to a king.
Yeah, that's not an uncommon story, is it?
Yeah, it's not a common story, especially in my part of the world.
Yeah.
And he before, when the revolution in France, start taking root in 1795, they helped the revolutionary in the Netherlands, and they established the Bataafse Republic. And the Bataafse Republic was, they turned it into a puppet regime of France. So at first, the people in the Netherlands were very happy that they get rid of the Oranje family, that is orange. But it was then Orange the Fifth, Willem the Fifth, and he fled to England. But they regretted it when France started to interfere, and everything, was because the revolutionaries were not really strong to stand up to France.
Yeah.
France. And then it was just so bad that in 1804, Napoleon Bonaparte declared the Netherlands a kingdom, and he gave it to his brother Louis Bonaparte. And when Louis Bonaparte didn't deliver, he took it back from him, and he made it a part of the Grand France.
Right.
And so
sibling rivalry, right?
Yeah, not only actually there was not much of a rivalry, because Napoleon Bonaparte held all the cards, and actually he did this in Italy too. So he gave Italy to another brother of his, and to this day, you cannot talk about this stuff because it's almost like forbidden. So all I want to say is that this whole idea of militarism and people need to stand in a file in front of the class, and you need to be humiliated in the front instead of cooperation in the class. No, you guys have to fight, and you have to be number one, number two. Just think about a child, a 7-year-old, who is told clearly, you are not good, you are not smart.
Right, or you're average or below average.
Or you're average or below average. So none of that. So this Bedouin life is a totalitarian society, the Bedouins, completely totalitarian society. And you can learn as you wish. And I can tell you, knowing the two systems, that there is no place of comparison. The complete totalitarian regime of education, it's absolutely, in my case, 100%, 1000% better than this, like pitting people against each other. Of course, it needs to be developed, because the Bedouin teaches you what you need. But of course, now we need many other things that we can teach, without, with love.
Well, let's talk about how that prepared you for something that, when you were dreaming about being a camel herder, you never thought about one day being kidnapped and tortured and held prisoner in a foreign land. And I know the movies and our conversations in the past don't give me a full picture of you, but the picture that I do have is one of a person that was uniquely capable of surviving that horrible situation and coming out of it with compassion and love and a desire to make things better. How do you think your upbringing prepared you for that moment when you were taken a prisoner, and then everything that came after?
So I just first want to tell you how I came. Maybe you know it already, but maybe the
listeners don't know.
Yeah, the listeners maybe don't know. So in '99, I received a phone call from my cousin. He was a close friend of Osama bin Laden, and he called me with, unbeknownst to me, he called me with a mobile phone, a satellite phone, I think, that belonged to Osama bin Laden. And the reason why he called me, first, he was my family, and second, his father was in a hospital and he needed help. And he asked me to help him wire some money to his father. And without thinking twice about it, of course, I did help him. There was a problem with this phone call. It was listened to by the CIA. Again, this is unbeknownst to me. And I was, then I was followed. I was investigated, and I had no idea about any of this. And but the German actually didn't find anything, and they told clearly the Americans there is nothing that they could find against me. After months of intensive surveillance, that I wasn't aware of. But when they start, my life start really to get very hard everywhere I go. There's the regular bureaucracy, and so everything was hard. And then my family called me and they said that my other cousin was arrested, and he was asked about me. So I knew I was wanted in Mauritania.
What year is this, Mohamedou?
99, already 99.
So we're still in 1999 when you're...
Yeah. So I decided then to go to, I was very scared, and I decided to immigrate to Canada, like I'm very qualified then because I studied microelectronics, telecommunication, and it was, I think still to this day, it's very demanded everywhere because people always need to communicate, need the devices to communicate and so on, programs to go with. And I was accepted. I came to Canada, and, running away from Germany, from surveillance. And then I just want to keep my head down and find the job, and start to take care of my family. But when I arrived in 99, I arrived in November. And in December, a man by the name of Ahmed Rassam, whom I never met, I don't know, I never heard of his name, tried to cross the US border in the infamous Millennium Plot. And the story was complete as far as the CIA and FBI was concerned, that I was the mastermind,
And where does that come from, you think?
The phone first?
No, where does this concept that you were the mastermind come from? Where do they get this idea in the first instance?
So I was in Germany. I was called by someone who is using Osama bin Laden.
Sure.
I moved to Canada. When I moved to Canada, as soon as I arrived in Canada, a person, who is, Arab to Muslim, apparently, he tried to cross. So they said, this is an operation that has been,
Right. Just a coincidence that two Muslims were crossing in about the same time.
And the same, and same also city. And so, again, the Canadian were much more aggressive than the German. But again, there was no evidence even to arrest me for questioning. Nothing, zero. There is no relationship between me and the guy. And then again, there is this confirmation bias, which is we all we're subject to it because we're human. But, I don't understand why organizations don't have safeguards against this confirmation bias, but there was really hell-bent that, as you will know in the story, hell-bent that I was the guy. And then, so the Canadians said to them, we cannot arrest him. There is no evidence. And then they called the Mauritanian for help. So the Mauritanian and the Canadian and the American said that the only way for them to get me, so Mauritania said, if you get him to this country, we will arrest him. Because we don't need, we don't need we don't need to show cause.
Mm-hmm.
So then they cooked up. I don't know how the conversation went down, but the Mauritanian intelligence came to my family and they asked my mother to call me and tell me that she was sick, that I need to come. They told her the reason why you should call him because he's in trouble in the other country and we want to save him from the trouble.
Okay, so everybody's lying. Again,
yeah, of course, it's an operation to lure me away in a place where there is no law. And this is like, I don't know how to say this, but not even though there is in your country a very long tradition of the rule of law, the United States is a republic since 1979. And still there are people who are very powerful in the government who don't believe in democracy, who think this is all joke, and if you really want to secure a country, you need to undermine the rule of law. And I'm only a very small example, but in the broader context, you see this constant relationship, closer relationship, warm relationship with dictators all over the world, because they serve a purpose. They serve the purpose of keeping the barbarian, at bay, the limes, just like the Romans. When the Romans come to a place, they build a wall, they erect a wall, and they call it limes, meaning in Latin the border, and so they keep those barbarian there, and the other, of course, serving also some geopolitical fantasy. I don't know. I can't relate to this because I never been a dictator, and I never been a president of colonial power. So this is very evil. Like a country that is not only, a democratic country, but the leader of the free world should be able to protect itself from the criminal without resorting to, egregious human rights violation that completely undermine the Constitution, undermine everything it signed up. Because when the United States of America violates human rights, that's very, very dangerous thing, very big thing, because people all around the world look up to the United States of America, and they take example. Today, you cannot seriously, in countries like Mauritania, Saudi Arabia, Iran, say, oh, why you violate human rights? And then American government, people just will look at you and just laugh at you. They say, did you mean this as a joke?
Mm-hmm.
And you cannot, yeah.
You're saying we lose our moral high ground when we violate human rights.
And this is bad news for everyone.
Right.
Because people, we want to change, we want to be free people. And there is a very strong civil society, in countries like my part of the world, in Iran, in Mauritania, in West Africa. And they always say, look at America. It's a good example, and people are, they have to eat, they can elect. And then the people in power who don't want to lose it, they say, if someone is threatening the security of the country, there is no law. And I don't want to talk about generalities. When I was released in October 2016, I was deprived from my papers, from my passport. And after 3 years of fighting, peacefully, and this is like American orders, and they wanted me to stay home for the rest of my life. After 15 years of illegal imprisonment, they wanted to be imprisoned in home until I go to the grave. And knowing that I hadn't done anything wrong, and I didn't violate any American laws, I didn't hurt anyone, and they want me because I have a message to say and I have something to share. So, and the guy, the policeman, when he gave me my passport, this is the chief of police, He told me, you keep talking about the law, the rule of law. There is no rule of law. He told me what America says is the rule of law.
Mm.
Yes. And
And so when you get released in 2016, you're sent where? To Mauritania?
yeah, I was sent to Mauritania because America tends to send people, the US tends to send people to countries where they still have control over their lives.
Mm.
So, you know.
So we got a little ahead of ourselves. 1999, you're tricked from coming from Canada back to Mauritania because they make your mother say that she needs you to come back because they tell her that you're in danger, and you're questioned at that time, and ultimately they find no reason to inquire further, right?
Yeah, the FBI came, they interrogated me, and Mauritania told them, if you want to take him, take him.
Right. But they don't.
The FBI said, there is no, we cannot take him because there is nothing.
And nothing really new happens other than I'm sure your life is still uncomfortable until September 11th, the attacks on the United States. So
1 second.
Sure.
1 second. I need to silence my phone.
Sure.
So that's not the only thing that the US told them. They told them, but he cannot leave the country. Take away his papers. And they just destroyed my life. So they said, we cannot take him because there is no evidence, but we don't trust him. So just take away his passport and don't let him leave the country.
And then how did things change for you after September 11th?
So I stayed, I kept my head down, I found a job, and I start work. After 9/11, again, I was interrogated by the FBI and other organizations, and then I was released again. And then November 20th, 2001, two police agents in plain clothes came to my house. They asked me to come with them. Of course, they don't show you any reason. Those are just, mafia-like, kidnapping. I was alone with my mother, and I could see the fear in her eyes. She was shaking, and she took out her prayer beads, and she started praying. I could see her hands shaking, really. And then they were very, the police, they were like very adamant that I need to come. They cannot lose time. And when they moved, I could see my mother in the rearview mirror until she disappeared. And she disappeared forever. I never saw my mother again. Many years later, she died.
Right. Yeah, and the movie, listeners, if you haven't seen it, The Mauritanian, which is on Netflix now, and it's an amazing movie. It's a very poignant movie that depicts just a small portion of your experience and has to truncate it for purposes of Hollywood. But Jodie Foster does an amazing job playing your lawyer, Nancy Hollander, who we've interviewed on this show before. And that scene, I call it a scene, that moment, as you say, you see life in moments where you're seeing your mother for the last time, and she had to have known it as mothers know things. Just has to be one of the most poignant moments of your life.
Yes. And I remember many years, I felt so much guilt, of letting my mother down, but I just want the listener, especially of the United States of America, to understand that if they see people angry, in the Middle East or in Africa, there is a reason, because we are not asking too much. We're only asking like dignity. We're asking for freedom. We're asking not to be arrested or kidnapped without due process. I know my family. I know my neighbors. They're not asking too much, They're just asking that, young people don't get tortured, because they say something or because they go to a particular mosque or because they wear beards or they wear certain kind of clothes. And that's actually happening, And most of these so-called crimes of terrorism are self-fulfilling prophecies. And I know history. I read history. I love history. Because terrorism is the only crime in the world that countries don't agree on. So I'm here in Europe. I met a lot of refugees. People, who really fear for their lives. In their country, they're terrorists. And they face like death. And who is to say, who is terrorist and not terrorist? And on the other hand, if you kill someone, whether you kill it in South Korea, in North Korea, or in Iran, or in the US, it's the same thing. You kill someone. This is a crime.
Sure.
And again, I don't want to go on and on because the Nazis. We have a very small village in not far from Amsterdam called Putten, and during the Nazi occupation, a young man or two young men, I don't know how many, attacked a German tank, and they ended up wounding, I think, or even killing one German soldier. And then the German came to the village. They say, either you give us the terrorist, or you will be all punished. And then the citizen of the village refused to say anything. Maybe they even don't know who did the operation. And then they took 637 men to the concentration camp. And we all know about the Crystal Knights, a very young Jewish man in Paris attacked a German diplomat because of what happened to his family in Poland. And the propaganda minister in Germany said that this is an affront against the German people, and they hold all Jewish people responsible to condemn this operation. And this was like, opening the door to the mob, against innocent Jewish citizen, attacking them, plundering their shops, their house of worships, and killing many, and stealing.
Yeah, through guilt by association. So
absolutely. And so all I want to say, just with,
sure.
I don't want to lose the line. So I just want your listener to understand that we need freedom, we need democracy, and most importantly, we need the American government at least to stop propping up, authoritarian regime who kill people, who arrest people, instead of encouraging them, because my family and I, we love America. We love American people. We want to be friends to American people, The fact that we want freedom is not an affront to American people. It's not something against American people. Of course, we may worship in mosque, and a lot of American people may worship in synagogues or in church. But that's not the point. The fact that everybody, need to be free, and even like the most extremist views, as long as they are not violent, they should not be oppressed. Because you need to understand something. This 9/11 gave what the United States did after 9/11 was the biggest gift to the dictators and authoritarian regime in my region. Because now they have a carte blanche to do everything they want, with no, no accountability whatsoever, in the name of, fighting terrorism. As long as the United States is holding one single person outside the rule of law, they doing horrific thing because it affects everyone. It supports all dictators, in the world. And also to this day, in spite of torture, in spite of so much money thrown at this, crazy war, there is no justice for the, innocent people who were killed in cold blood 9/11. Not one single person in Guantanamo Bay, to my knowledge, was held accountable. To this day, 22 years on. And that tells you everything.
So you're not initially brought to Guantanamo Bay. Tell our listeners where you're brought, and to the extent you're comfortable about that experience, and then how you wind up being brought to Guantanamo Bay.
I was taken, I was taken to a place in Mauritania. Of course, incommunicado, my family was forbidden from contacting me. I was not afforded a lawyer, obviously. And I just wanted to sleep and not wake up. And I was so weak because I refused to eat. I wasn't like staging a hunger strike or anything, but I just couldn't eat anymore. Then they had to bring a doctor and try to keep me alive. Then after 8 days in that prison, I was taken by a kidnapping team, a special plane that took me to Jordan. I heard in the Mauritanian, they said, before we departed, they said that one of the stop was Cyprus. And when we stopped, I was praying that someone comes to the plane and search it, because I just want to be taken to prison, because I know Cyprus is part of the European Union, and I was so naive. Because knowing what I know today, that the European Union, was also in bed with the United States of America in this torture. And I wanted them to arrest me and to put me in prison because I didn't want to be tortured. But no one came. My prayers went unanswered. And I cannot explain to you the fear, in that plane, that you will go to a place where they will torture you. And I was thinking, what type of story should I tell them? What will save my skin? Literally save my skin. And I don't know how to explain this, but imagine 12 hours. I think the plane took 12 hours from Nouakchott to Jordan, all night long, in Ramadan, holy months, where I was supposed to be with my family, eating, watching the movies that we used to watch in Ramadan, staying up most of the night, joking, laughing. But I was waiting on the Jordanian team that was hired by the United States of America to torture me. We arrived, I don't know when, because I couldn't hear and I couldn't see. And I was always guided by this team, ninjas. And I remember hearing the radio through the I remember the accent. I love this Levant accent. It's very soothing. But soon I only heard a little bit, and then they changed the channel. Then they put what instead? Of course, they put the Quran. And this is so devastating to me, that I'm being tortured by my own people. This is worse than anything, And I was taken to this prison. I stayed there 8 months. I turned into a ghost. Most of the time, I didn't know day or night. And I remember like putting a small like line, scratching a line in the cell and then counting the day. When I was taken away, I had to sign a paper, and then I saw in the paper that I was 10 days wrong.
You were off by 10 days.
Yes, yes.
And while they're torturing you, is it clear what they're trying to get you to say or what they're hopeful that you will say? Or is it just torture for torture's sake?
So in Jordan, I was only beaten twice. It's not for long. And I was exposed to, they took me to a room where they torture people and they made me hear all the cries. And of course, the constant 8 months, constant fear. Mm-hmm. I cannot explain to you what this, what this makes you, right. Make of you. This is nonstop fear.
Just the threat of what's to come.
Yeah, hearing also the noises of people crying, Right. And so Jordanian wanted me to admit that I was the mastermind of the Millennium Plot. So I just want your listener to understand that the United States of America today knows that I have nothing to do with 9/11 or with the Millennium Plot, because many years later, the guy who did the Millennium Plot decided to fully cooperate with the United States of America, and he told them everything, but he did not tell them this before I was already tortured for something I have nothing to do with.
Right.
So that's what the Jordanian wanted me to tell them. But I think, to be honest, after a couple of months or so, the Jordanian decided that I wasn't really responsible, because it turns out they were invited to Canada to be a operation to go to the mosque, because they use them because they are Muslim and blah, blah. And so the American hired them so they could go into mosque and spy on the community. And they told me they were in my mosque and everything. And I said, okay, I'm happy that you were there. So you know that I wasn't. And then I asked the interrogator, he said, what did you see me doing? He said, you were very friendly. I said, okay. And then he said, that's all I saw in the mosque, that you were smiling to everyone and so. And he was accurate, like in his description inside the mosque. And to be honest, maybe he was there, maybe he just read the report because they sent other people, maybe,
right.
Because this is like, you need to understand that this constant cooperation between the U.S. and those, regimes who use like illegal means is a very constant thing. And, I'm not radical, meaning I do understand there is a real need to cooperate, because, to prevent crazy, demented people,
Sure,
from going out there and killing innocent people. That's, to me, I don't know where you draw the line. And I'm sure like torture and arresting people without due process, that should be a good red line. In this case, it wasn't. Right.
And it gets back to the confirmation bias, because it sounds like you're describing a system where the Jordanians in this instance really want to please the Americans. They want to find something that justifies whatever other benefits maybe they're getting from the relationship. And so when they're finding that you seem like a nice guy who smiles at people in the mosque, they don't know what to do with that. And that's when you get shipped to Guantanamo Bay.
So the Jordanian, we know now from the record, the Jordanian told Americans there is no indication he was involved in anything. So you have the German told them that. You have the Canadian telling them that. You have the Mauritanian telling them that. Actually, the Mauritanian made it very official. As late as 2019, I think, 2019, the former intelligence chief who handed me to the Jordanian, he told them, I told the American there is nothing, and the American did not give me anything.
Mm-hmm. It didn't matter. So, it didn't matter.
But later on, Mr. X, I really wanted to watch In Search of Monsters, a very good documentary that was made by a German-American journalist, investigative reporter by the name of Jean Goetz, and he won this Emmy Award.
And what's it called?
In Search of Monsters.
Okay.
And so he confronted Mr. X. And I remember what Mr. X told me, because I told him, look, you sent me to all of those countries, and they all told you that I was innocent. Why do you insist? Because I never been to the US. the countries where I've been told you I wasn't involved, and I never been to the US. So he told me, I never forget. He told me 9/11 happened in the US. It did not happen in Jordan. And actually, it wasn't a bad argument of his in this context, to be honest. And I didn't have an answer to this argument. So meaning that they have to be much more aggressive than the other countries. But anyway, I was taken by the CIA from Jordan to Bagram. I was interrogated there and exposed to torture in the guise of being shackled 24/7. In a cell, peeing on myself, and because there is no bathroom, and then made to stand for many long hours. And but I wasn't beaten. I was only beaten the last day when they took me to Guantanamo Bay, because when they transport you from one place to another, that's an open season. They can do anything to you. They beat you, they do anything they want with no prompt from your part. But we know this, even when they take you from one cell to the next, they beat you, because people are angry, like the guards, a lot of them angry, and I don't blame them to be angry. I would be angry if someone also come and kill innocent people, except they're angry at the wrong person,
Right.
I'm not the one who did this to you. But unfortunately, people tend to believe governments. Sure. I don't know how, but that's our tendency.
Well, and in this case, they were told to be there, and so there had to be bad guys. One of the people that you spent a lot of time with, I believe his name is it Steve Wood?
Correct.
Was one of your guards, and he also came with a predisposition that there were bad people there. You were one of the worst. You were supposed to be the mastermind, and yes. Not long after, or at some point after seeing you and spending time with you, he became convinced that he wasn't there for the right reasons, and that you were not the person that he was told you were. Right?
Yes, and they made it very clear to the guard, it's none of your business, like this is bad people, you need to trust us.
Right.
And I never tried to counter this narrative, because the guard, they do what the intelligence team tells them, and there is no way for me. And I never argued for my innocence, because Actually, it's very counterproductive because when I argued my innocence, I was tortured. Because when I came to Guantanamo Bay, I told them, okay, what do you want from me? Basically, I mean, this is all on record.
Sure.
They said, okay, who are you? I said, I'm so and so. That's my story. And then after, I don't know, 1 month, they want to interrogate me. I said, no, I'm done. I'm not answering any of your question. Let's go to court or whatever. Or you let me here die. But I'm not answering any of your questions. They tried with me a lot, and then I refused. And then they took me to torture. And then the floodgate opened. I said, whatever you want me to sign. When Richard Zuli came to me and said they kidnapped my mother,
right,
and then she would be raped. I told him whatever you want me, and then they helped me to write. Sergeant Charlie, First Sergeant Charlie, helped me to write my confession because he told me, maybe you are not part of 9/11. He was very smart because he wanted me to make a confession that will stick. And he was right. I'm not part of 9/11. He said, maybe you attacked you tried to blow up the CN Tower. I never heard of CN Tower, even though I was in Canada, but I never was in Toronto. And then I wrote a confession a complete confession and how I was planning to. And then they brought this to a Couch, Colonel Couch. And because I was the first death penalty case, there were like 15. Me and the rest, I think, were Saudis. We were 15. And then I was the number 1 death penalty because they want me as a test case because I was very good candidate for death penalty. And I can tell you, Michael, how it felt, how weird it felt when they came to me and they explained to me that I was death penalty case and what could I do to mitigate, like if I testified, and give them other young Muslim people. And so I had no feeling. I was like completely numb. And of course, everybody will die. I will die. You will die. Everybody, that's a fact, actually, of life. But the fact that someone is going to kill you, it doesn't matter even what you do. It's just something else. And let alone someone who wants to kill you for something in the heart of your heart that you have nothing to do with. So ironically, after, I don't want to go into too many details in the torture, but I was beaten, they broke several of my ribs. I was waterboarded. I was sexually assaulted on 3 occasions by women and men at the same time. And I was sleep deprived for 70 days straight, and then break, and then more. I wasn't allowed to eat for many days, and then they give me like garbage to eat. And I wasn't allowed to pray. I wasn't allowed to do, Ramadan or anything. Even though I don't even know what Ramadan was because I was 24/7, inside the hall. I didn't know day or night. And this confession actually was the unraveling of the case, ironically, against him. Because Richard Zuli, he was a contractor, and he had a team, but the CIA did not give him the information they have. The FBI did not give him the information. And he just went wild because he wanted conviction. Turns out he has a very bad track record of forcing out conviction. A confession of people who are innocent, I just read today that one of his victims, after 35 years of imprisonment. He was found to be not guilty, and he's even suing the city of Chicago. This is the kind of people who are qualified,
Right.
to interrogate us. And after his success with me and others, he was sent to Iraq.
Right.
Yeah. So this was the unraveling because so the FBI knows that I didn't do this. The CIA knows I didn't do this. But to the FBI and CIA, I am not important. Whether I get tortured or not get tortured, they have other important things to worry about, finding the bad guys. And at least I come from a bad place. At least my cousin is a friend of Bin Laden. Turns out my cousin even has nothing to do with 9/11. and so and that's when Colonel Couts start to question everything, and they kept just like stonewalling him. He's the guy who want to kill me, and they wouldn't even give him the information. And he found out that I was heavily tortured, and he later on we became friends. Now we had May last year we had an event in Geneva together, and
that's amazing.
And this is how really bad this whole operation. And I mean, forget about us, forget about Middle Easters, forget about Muslims. Just think about 22 years, 3,000 people. Not one single detainee in Guantanamo Bay was held accountable.
Right. It's about, obviously, we can't forget about you. We can't forget about people that were tortured and murdered. But your point's well taken that it doesn't get you any closer to the truth.
No.
And that's the sad part. That is the secondary sad part. And I know you're tired. I know you've been flying all night, so I'm going to let you go in a minute. But I want to ask you this question. And again, I encourage our listeners to read Guantanamo Diary, to watch the Mauritanian. There's lots of great YouTube pieces about your relationship with your former guard, Steve Wood. And I know you're doing a lot of great projects and a lot of public speaking. So I applaud all of that. What impresses me the most about you is your spirit of love and kindness. And if I can use this word, and it's not fair for me to use it, but it appears a sense of forgiveness. And if that's misplaced, please correct me. But I want to know where that spirit, that beautiful spirit, comes from, and where you find the strength for that.
So when I grew up, the person who first taught me to read was my grandma. And I remember she started writing Alif Ba. I think she wrote 2 letters, Alif Ba, this is A and B, very much close. And I wasn't paying attention to my slate because they write in slate, because I was more worried about the other kids. This is always me. I never pay attention to my own stuff. I always pay attention to the other kids. Then I saw this kid with a slate with a lot of writing. And I was very depressed because I said, why did she write for him so many letters? And then I thought that every letter is original and unique and different. I did not know that there is like less than 30 letters that will, be responsible for all the sounds. I thought that everything consists of letters, and he has like million letters in his head. And I have only 2, and I was very, very depressed. I didn't know what to do. And then she taught me that always, that I need always to help other people, because if I help someone, Allah will help me 10 times. And then she would give me like small change, and I go out and then give it to people who are needy. And then when I come back, I find 10 times, which is a good investment, to be honest. So And then, so when I was taken from Jordan, they tricked me because they always want, because they know we are really in a very bad situation. They would, put you like at ease. They told me I was going home. So, but when I arrived at the Jordanian airport, someone started to open, like to tear my clothes, my prison uniform, and they stripped me naked. So I know I wasn't going home. And I suspect that I was going to be taken by Americans to the US. And then I was so terrified because all those documentaries I saw about American prison when I was in Germany, those very poor soul, like mostly like people of color, waiting death or, like wasting their life in prison. And I saw myself like one of them. And I knew my life is gone. I started to regret. Then, Michael, I did not regret that I didn't have money. I did not regret that I didn't have like a big apartment in Paris. I did not regret so many beautiful women I met who did not want me. I only regretted one thing. I regretted every time I spoke in anger to my mother or my sisters or my friends or my brothers or the people I meet or the people I'm in a relationship with. And I promised, I made a pact that when I have another chance to life, I will always be a kind person. Because this is the only thing that I would care about when I leave this earth. I wouldn't care about this life. It's not an exercise of getting even or an equal opportunity. This is not an equal opportunity life, and, we have to forgive, to find peace, because without forgiveness, I will not find peace. One of the detainees who was tortured and forced to say that he knows me, his name is Ramzi Al-Shayba. He was tortured until he lost his mind. And just the other day, the judge, for the second time, another judge decided that he's not fit, to go to trial, because he just lost his mind, And I remember people who were with him in this dark prison, they said he was crying so bad every single night, and he just kept like telling them whatever they want to hear, and I think America is better than this. Yeah. America is you, Michael. America is Nancy. America is Steve Wood. America is those beautiful people who go around the world and help people and spread peace and democracy. Wow. America is not Richard Zulu or Mr. X.
Thank you for seeing the best in America. And Mohamedou Ould Slahi, you may not have become a camel herder like your father, but you certainly learned his lesson of not speaking anger to your mother or to your family or to any other person. And thank you for that beautiful example.
Thank you, Michael, for having me. And I can't wait to listen to your podcast.
I look forward to sharing it with you. Keep doing great things and let us know where we can support you.
You do too, brother. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.
Peace with you.
You as well. Wow. Well, I hope you enjoyed that. Enjoyed's not the right word. I hope you appreciated it, benefited from it. I hope it challenged some of your views. Maybe it supported some of your views. If there's things that you heard, and obviously we couldn't get into everything, I hope it will inspire you to learn more about him, to learn more about Guantanamo Bay, to learn more about America and the world's reactions after September 11th, because I think he tells a very compelling story through his life and his lived experience, but also through his examples of others, and frankly through his references to history of a tendency of human beings, human nature, regimes, countries, leaders in the interest of protecting democracy or something resembling it to actually sacrifice the ideals of democracy. And he talks about confirmation bias and things that, just caused horrible pain in his life, caused him to never see his mother again. And but it happens in all of our lives. We are all flawed creatures, and we all have this opportunity to see the things we want to see that confirm what we think we already know, or to dig deeper and to fight against that, and to try to be more loving and more kind and more empathetic. And, frankly, I'll say more like Mohamedou Ould Slahi. I'm certainly inspired to try to do that, and I hope you are too.